When Brian and I started Infection, the H1Z1 podcast over 8 years ago, the goal was pretty simple. Talk about a video game, H1Z1, that we loved to play and build a community around. Over time, H1Z1 fell out of favor.
When we started broadening our scope and talking about survival games in general, like Ark, Conan Exiles, Rust, and more, we had a lot of fun and we had the same goal. We wanted to talk about video games and build a community around that. During the survival podcast phase of the show, we started noticing a shift in the video game industry. Our Twitter account, which predominantly followed official video games, game developers, and community managers, started becoming inundated with political speech.
This political speech was all one-sided and very left-leaning, but we ignored it for many years, not wanting to bring politics into the podcast. After years of reading their opinions, watching developers lose their jobs and livelihoods because of cancel culture, and the left's continued assault on the video game industry that we all know and love, we decided something needed to be done. This is the brand new Infection Podcast. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome in to the brand new Infection Podcast. My name is Nick Craig. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode 420. No correlation to that in any way, shape, or form. It's a little bit different with the intro and some of the graphics and the name, now just Infection Podcast. But one thing has stayed the same for the last 8 years. That is my phenomenal co-host, Brian with an I, Aldridge. Brian, good evening, and very excited to kick off this new phase with you.
I know. Thank you for keeping me on the show. I appreciate being able to stay.
You know, there was a lot of talks behind the scenes, a lot of, like the whole Steven Crowder thing with Daily Wire. There's a lot of that going on here too. Brian was asking some ungodly amount of money to continue using his likeness. It was a real hard-fought battle, but I think after all, we worked it out. I do want to give a huge shout-out before we get started to our friend Landgun44, who has helped us tremendously with this rebrand. All the new graphics and a lot of the stuff that you're seeing here is because of his great work, so props to him. As you heard in the intro, Infection Podcast, as it will be known now, is going to cover the intersection here of the video game industry, where it meshes and meets with modern politics. And we'll be doing this same structure in terms of the time of the show each and every week. We've been doing that for quite some time, but now really kind of jumping all in on. I put on Twitter, the gloves are kind of off, Brian. We're attacking this thing head on now.
And it unties our hands a little bit, because that's one thing we, as we said in the beginning, we held back from trying to talk about politics for a long, long time. Thank you, UGX5, for the subscription. The H1 Emu podcast. When's that going to start?
That's the that's the emulator. That's the H1 EMU project podcast.
Creating their own servers and keeping H1Z1 alive. But that's something that we initially, especially in H1Z1 days, we started seeing all these politics come in. We kept out of it, and we let it start to trickle in over the last couple of years. Started talking about it more and more. Eased people into the idea of it, and then here we go. Now we can actually talk about things. We'll still talk about a lot of the games that we have talked about, but now we're really gonna focus on some of these political things, because it's on a weekly basis. Something is happening politically in the video game industry now.
Yeah, and from a just from a kind of pull the curtain back behind the standpoint a little bit, the survival podcast is not, let's be perfectly honest, is not the hottest thing going on right now. We were a little pigeonholed with the name and everything. So I will say this, if you're out and about and listening to the show and you notice that there's icons that aren't updated or something looks funky in your podcast app, let us know in Discord or send us an email, contact@infectionpodcast.com. I think we got everything, but there still might be a couple of stragglers out there, so you can hit us up over there. Well, Brian, it makes perfect sense to start off this week's episode with a pretty big statement from Phil Spencer, who is kind of Mr. Xbox. He's been he's been the face of the Xbox going back as long as it's existed. He was at an event in New York City this past week, and he praised developers for releasing games amid a culture of cancellation or cancel culture, or this, this woke idea of everybody constantly is getting thrown out of their, buildings, losing their jobs. I'm serious about their livelihoods being destroyed. We've seen a lot of that over the last couple of months. Pretty big statement there from Phil Spencer. What is your initial impression to somebody as powerful as him essentially calling this out for what it is?
Yeah, and I think that we have a really big example of this. For instance, the Rick and Morty co-creator, who has pretty much been removed from everything before. Now, a lot of these things I think he has stepped away from, and perhaps he's guilty, perhaps he's not, but I haven't heard a statement from him whatsoever, and he's removed from every project that I can see that he's been a part of.
Yeah.
And this whole innocent until proven guilty thing is gone. Now, if he knows that he's guilty and that's why he's stepping away, good for him for not dragging it out and pretending like, there's nothing. I know he's been working to try to keep those companies going, but there's a lot of other examples where it ends up that none of it was true. All of it was baseless. All of these things were just people on Kotaku and people on these various blogs writing opinion pieces and then just trashing someone until a company feels pressured to remove them. And there was the example of the young lady here 2-3 weeks ago that was removed from her position just for saying she wanted to play a certain video game and have made a political comment 6 years ago.
Yes.
And she loses her job for this. We got
Wow, look at that.
Thank you, Langan, for the donation. $5 donation.
Appreciate you, Langan. Thanks for everything.
And this is something where I think that's a perfect example of one-sided, especially in business. All these corporations think that they have to represent one side rather than letting two people have differences of opinion. And I think that's what held us back personally from maybe rebranding, at least for me, being in the development world. They're very sensitive. Now, you're a talk radio host that talks politics all day. So for you, this is something totally different. For me, this is something where I don't talk my politics at work because cancel culture is the perfect example. We don't talk politics because it's not friendly. I'd love talking politics, obviously, but I would not like the response that I would get, regardless of how tame my opinions may be.
So I pulled some of this audio from Phil Spencer. He was at an event, which, by the way, I didn't even know existed. Were you aware of the annual New York Game Awards? I hadn't heard of it either. It's the 12th annual. It's a little weird setup. It started off with a bunch of people on Zoom, and then it went into the event itself. So here was towards the end of his address to the crowd. He was in person at this event, and this is his comments on cancel culture and from a developer standpoint, how some of that stuff is being dealt with.
We, all of us here today, all of our teams around the globe, we are all part of creating this echo effect of joy. Our creators who bravely and intentionally release their visions to the world, particularly in the current culture of criticism and cancellation. Our players who bravely and intentionally carve out time for our games to invite, rest, and rejuvenate their lives. And business leaders, we are called upon to have the courage to protect and nurture this collective joy. We are called on to incubate these experiences, create them, and grow them, to seek and surround ourselves with a multitude of perspectives, to honor our differences across experiences and geographies, and to practice empathy when intentionally listening to others. We turn away from dividing players and creators and instead towards each other as we advance and amplify joy together.
I think that's one of the most important lines in that, Brian. And, he talked about this effect of joy, which is what many people look to video games for, is to get out of their, and I say this, I don't say this lightly, get out of their miserable lives that they don't like, their rough situations that they're dealing with, and they want to disconnect from that. It's why people watch sports. It's why they read comic books. And a lot of that is to get a break from reality, which for many folks is pretty grim, unfortunately. He talked about this echo effect of joy and how, developers and creators are having to, worked through this landscape of constant cancellation criticism. You don't have to look that far. Look at the situation with this Harry Potter game, which has just been just completely blown out of proportion and a total sham.
Yep.
All of this for what? Because the lady is not too far left. I mean, it's just like, Jesus Christ.
Yep.
Like, this is what we're talking about at this point. It's bizarre.
Well, and I saw an article this past week talking about that, where they said Harry Potter, this new Hogwarts Legacy, the right game at the wrong time.
Oh.
And you look and say, okay, well, why is this at the wrong time? And then they start going into, because J.K. Rowling, she has the wrong opinions. And so therefore, it's a good game, but, and I have in the show notes, we're going to have in the show notes here, there's an article where, now this is not going to be pro J.K. Rowling for this article, I'm sure, but they will go into explaining their side of what's going on with the issue. But there is an article that's going to be talking about that whole J.K. Rowling Hogwarts Legacy boycott controversy from Yahoo News. And so if you wanted to do that, but I did pull a very long opinion piece that she wrote and put on her own blog explaining her position, because people haven't heard her position in this whole thing. Unless you follow her on Twitter.
Well, so that's what I was going to say. I don't follow her on Twitter because, again, let's be clear with J.K. Rowling. She is a leftist person. She's a liberal, right?
Oh yeah,
that's self-described, self-proclaimed.
She's a left-leaning feminist.
Yes,
or however left you want to, however left that is nowadays. I mean, it used to be that was really left, and nowadays that's kind of left compared to what else is out there. So they call her a TERF. Do you know what a TERF is?
I feel like I do, but I don't.
It's a trans exclusionary radical feminist. So that's what they call her.
So
that's she says that's a trans activist term that they've created. For people like her.
She put this out on Twitter yesterday, and I saw 2 days ago, and I saw this, and it's an image from some thing dealing with women's suffrage, and it's showing a woman with her head in some sort of vice clamp, shackled and tied to a chair, saying, what I would do with suffragists. And then the next picture is using your term here. It's some anime girl that says, "Shut the F up, TERF." And she just said, same shit, different century. And this tweet has 13.7 million views. She is being I wonder, Brian, when this all ends, will she come out of this a conservative? I mean, this has got to be infuriating for somebody that is a liberal to be just completely dragged down, completely dragged through the mud, and destroyed by your own party. Yep. That's who's doing this.
Well, and this is the thing. She makes a statement in this post. She says, ironically, radical feminists aren't even trans exclusionary. They include trans men in their feminism because they were born women. Just bring trans people on, but they have to be, for them to be a feminist with them, they have to have been born a woman, and then will fight for their rights to do whatever they want to do.
Yeah, but that's I guess that's TERF as you described, because that's not how it should work. That's not how they want it to work.
They want it to where they are, in every sense of the word, someone, even though they were born as a male, they are a woman, and you cannot refer to them other than that. That's what they want.
And at any time. So you can just decide tomorrow that you're a woman.
Once you decide, regardless of whether or not you've had any transition, whether you've taken any medication, whether you've had any surgeries, it does not matter. You are 100% considered a woman, a trans woman, when you decide. Have you seen this video of this figure skater that they had in the? I've seen this, and it's like they showed them at the championships for figure skating, and I'm a way better figure skater than that person.
Yeah,
way better figure, and I don't even need a toe pick, and I can skate better than that person. I mean, if you know figure skating, then you understand what I mean. But on hockey skates, I can skate better than that person can. If that's your representation of, hey, look, they should be a part of this, at least get a person who knows how to skate for the nationals of the figure skating Olympics. There's got to be more. I mean, there's a lot of I'm not really trans people that I skate and play hockey with, but there's a lot of gay people that I skate and play hockey with. I assume that at some point there are trans people who know how to skate. That can't be the only one, but he's definitely one of the worst. The guy fell down. I mean, barely could skate on one skate. Fell down.
It wasn't a great.
Had to get help from one of the people skating around, holding one of the flags to stand back up. That's how good of a skater their representation at the national skating championships.
Brian, a great man, a former president once said, "They're not sending their best," and I think that is a pretty accurate description of a lot of this stuff. So this Phil Spencer and Phil Spencer's comments and some of this garbage going on with Hogwarts Legacy and J.K. Rowling is very, very interesting.
If you like the game, buy the game. You don't have to like the person. Do we like everybody that we play games for? Because I mean, we talked about this earlier. Look at all the opinions of people that have made the games that we play, that are community managers for the games that we play, whatever it is. Throughout those companies, they are riddled with people that we disagree with, riddled with people that have trashed people like me, openly trashed us on Twitter, on their accounts. And we didn't freak out. Like, I don't have to enjoy following that person on Twitter and read everything they say. But did that make me say, hey, I don't want you guys playing H1Z1 anymore because I don't like the opinion of some of these developers and people in the company? No, if you like the game, play the game. Just, you don't have to like all the people. But here, if they don't agree with you, they will attack you in every sense of the word.
Yeah. USA of Zombie says Activision Blizzard is trash. Still play their games. Yeah, agreed. Still. You
don't have to love them, but if they put out a good product, if you're so against them, then hold your money back. But that doesn't mean that you attack the people creating it and try to ruin their careers.
Well, and there are different levels of it too, right? If ISIS is making a video game, right, then maybe you have a point of like, all right, these people are like actively beheading people and committing mass acts of terrorism across the world. Like, you would know.
But I feel like in their eyes, it's on that level. Like the way that they act towards people that are against their point of view, they act like we are terrorists, chopping people's heads off. They have that response when all we're doing is saying our side of our opinion.
Well,
it's not quite the same as kidnapping people and chopping their heads off, but we are stating our opinion, which is legal still, at least
in America,
supposed to be.
Yeah. I mean, here, not in some other phenomenal places. So yeah, it's very interesting, and it's stories like this, and it's this ongoing barrage that really kind of that we've seen over the last couple of months that have pushed us in this direction to to do this shift and change over the brand and do some of that stuff. And this is why it's situations and stories like this that have taken over the industry, and we just felt that there needed to be more voices on the right side of it talking about this and calling it out for what it is. So that's what we're going to do. But let's be clear, it's not going to be the entire every show is not just going to be laden with politics. And speaking of that, Brian, I caught something interesting right before we got on the air. DayZ, which we have talked about in our survival format for the show for years. I caught a tweet from them today. Check out these numbers on SteamDB. 32,800 people playing right now. Their 24-hour peak, 52,000, and their all-time peak. Now, DayZ has been out since, 2014, I think? This all-time peak happened 2 days ago at 63,000 people. You and I looked at it a little bit before we got on the air. It doesn't appear that they've done any massive recent updates. They did release their 2022 DayZ in review, included 8 new firearms, that huge Livonia update, which was way early in the year. That was in like April of last year. Dynamic events, vehicle simulation, controller changes, increased support for customizing console community servers, and continued modding support. So it's not like they just popped a massive update.
And I've looked at the news and tried to see, like, for instance, in the past week, has anything happened? No, nothing really big's happened. But maybe they're just kind of bringing back that player base. Remember when the economy's really bad, people go towards certain types of games. I mean, the H1Z1 started in a bad economy with us starting this. Remember, the economy was like now, and people were playing certain types of games. So maybe we're getting back to that type of mentality where people are playing these games where they can absorb their time because they've lost their jobs or they don't want to go out and spend money. Because that's what a lot of this came down to. People not wanting to go out and spend money, and they're not wanting to spend $70 on a new game. What's a game that you can just play as much time as you want to and get off when you're done? Those are the perfect type of games for that. And there's a lot of mods, so you can mix it up.
Yeah, there's plenty of mods. So if you like many of us, or I should say like many of you, we played DayZ way back. Probably worth taking a look at again. Obviously, a lot of people are playing it. There's probably a bunch of servers spawned up. So yeah, it might be something you want to check out there over at DayZ on Steam. So that's just something I caught out of the corner of my eye today.
Hey, I wanted to talk really quickly. A game that people have been watching that we have shown and talked about a little bit because they haven't shown a lot of video, but what is it? The Day Before, I think is what it's called. They were supposed to be releasing, and all of a sudden they've canceled and delayed it months and months. And they're saying it's because of a trademark dispute. Like they never got the name The Day Before to be able to legally use and to keep anybody else from using it. And I guess someone else had the name. And so now they're having to delay, but a lot of people are kind of calling them out and saying that they're thinking that it's because they don't really have a game to show. Remember, this is the one that they had a truck that was driving through mud that deformed, and they showed some gameplay of it. That has been the only real video that you've seen since then. And then they were teasing that they're going to release another video just a little bit before release. That did not happen, and now they did not. Someone else filled out a trademark application for The Day Before. Their game was announced due at January 2021, is what they say on here. After the announcement of the game, someone went and filled out a trademark on the name, and so they don't have that. So. This is previously they said that we were not aware of the existence of claims. We found out by this only on January 19th of 2023. So just a couple weeks ago when we received a complaint from him and a request to contact him. So,
well,
kind of a mess up on their part.
Yeah. So I'm not sure. They do seemingly indicate that there is in fact an actual trademark thing here. They post the link to it. And the guy that registered it. This is just a massive screw up on their side for not going ahead and doing this. This trademark has, at least according to this website that they linked, this application has been filed since May of 21. So it's been out there for some time.
Well, they announced in January of 21. That's the problem. They announced it, didn't do anything to lock down their name,
trademark,
and then this person filed a trademark on it after they released it.
Yeah. So what are they? What are they saying? I know. Excuse me. I know what they're saying. It seems like looking at some of the comments on Twitter, some people are just a lot of X to doubts and F and, and a lot of this stuff. Landgun says you've got to be some kind of dumbass to not have that squared away. I mean, here's the thing, Brian. This is not, no dig on indie developers. This isn't some like random indie development group. This is like a full-fledged gaming studio from what I'm
aware of, actually, right? No, I think they are actually a smaller team.
Smaller team, but they're not like, it's not one guy in his basement making a game.
No, but it was a small group of,
yeah,
but it's a smaller group of probably like 8 developers or something like that are developing this game. And so probably just not knowing the ins and outs or realizing, oh, well, we have to lock all this stuff down, especially before you announce a name. Before you announce a name, do the necessary steps to lock down that name so someone else can't take it from you. And make sure you have the rights to that name.
So they've got another game out. They've got a game called Prop Night out. They've obviously got this other game. Now they've got this thing on their page that says work at their company, and they've got a whole bunch of faces and names. I don't know if this is all of their employees. If it is, even if it's half of this, Brian, this is a royal screw up, because when you're a company of this size, right? You're not just a guy. You're not just two guys, two college buddies building a video game. You're a full company with payroll and taxes and unemployment insurance and disability. I mean, all this stuff, right? So this is just a massive screw up on their behalf. Very odd.
And the one
Very,
thing is,
very odd.
they call them volunteers, not employees. They said the volunteers and employees. So
no, they have two different things. They have
know.
volunteers, people that like test the game and stuff, and then they also have employees.
Yeah, and then actual coders and employees.
Yeah.
So we'll see if they come back with maybe a different name. If because they announced and showed the name prior to this person, and that person doesn't have any paperwork to really prove that they had anything prior to the announcement that they made. I mean, they may legally be able to do this, or maybe they'll just change the name. If the day before, you could come up with something that's just as catchy.
The day after.
Yeah, or yesterday.
Yeah, the day yesterday. Yeah. I mean, you can really.
Yesterday. I mean, you could come up with something to come up with a game that kind of gives you that feeling, and rebrand and just kind of move on from this. Because I don't think they barely showed anything. I don't think people are 100% tied to the day before. That's just what everybody's been calling it. Call it a working name and then come out with the actual what it's going to be.
Yeah, well, and you said the time period on this, 8 months is what you noted?
Yeah, so they're supposed to be delaying this for 8 months.
That's
now
nonsense.
People are supposed the day before, developers now say the launch delay was planned before the Steam takedown, but I don't know. But then they blamed the 8-month delay on the trademark dispute. So they're pushing it from March 1st to November 10th.
Oof. That's a big ol' F if I've ever heard one, Brian. That is that is what we've known to that's what we've known to love in the video game industry. So when was it supposed to be out? What was the original date? March
1st.
So we're essentially a month away.
A month.
Yeah, a month away from a game, and then an 8-month delay. Sounds like Cyberpunk. Sounds like a couple of other big games as well that have done this. It is an interesting theory, though, that maybe you really don't have anything.
Yeah, that's been kind of the concern, because they were supposed to show a video here in the next week or two, kind of a teaser, and that's what people were saying. Okay, well, finally we're going to see whether or not this is real and not just kind of a very limited set of stuff that they created and were showing off in one video. Because everything, it looks good, but sometimes when you get out of that really controlled environment, things start to fall apart.
Yeah.
And so, let's see. I'm giving it a chance. Maybe it'll be a fun game. Maybe it'll be made well. But they've shown so little content. It's kind of hard to say until we really get something, see some people playing it, see some live stream, something like that, to see if everything is propped up and they're not just showing the best of what they have.
Yeah, and this is always the $1 million test, and this is always why I continue to advocate that people don't pre-order games unless it's like half off or something like that, which is very odd. But unless it's like a 50% discount on pre-ordering it, wait till the game is released. I mean, or if there's if there's a real kick-ass pre-order bonus, maybe you have to bite the bullet, but on most games there's not. You don't need to pre-order it. You'll get it for the exact same price and just see what it lives up to. I mean,
I did, as I said, Hogwarts Legacy I pre-ordered just because I wanted to make a statement with my dollars.
Well, that's fine.
But usually I don't. Yeah.
But here's the thing, that's your right to do, Brian. But then if you sat here after it comes out and go, "Oh my God, the game is terrible," and it's like,
believe this.
Yeah. Well, I can't believe this has happened. Well, why did you pre-order a game that you didn't know? And it's a little bit different when you're talking about games like that and Call of Duties and Battlefields and AAA titles.
There's going to be something to play.
Something to play, like Star Citizen, No Man's Sky. Eventually, there will be something to play. It might take 10 years, but something eventually will come out. So very interesting to see this situation with the day before.
So, okay, I wanted to go back to Microsoft, if that's all right, for here a minute.
What you got?
Kind of follow up on some stories. Remember that proletariat, there we go, that studio that they purchased that was trying to form a union. and
French
then
company, right? Weren't they French? Maybe not. Maybe that's Ubisoft.
I don't.
I'm thinking.
No, I thought this one was in the United States.
Okay.
That was and now that has been blocked. Now a Blizzard employee is alleging racist and sexist culture at this company. Now, how are they blaming Microsoft for this when they only took over the company and still getting fully finalized in the last month or two? Are you going to be blaming Microsoft for the culture of the company that they just took over that tried to sneak in a whole unionization effort right before they joined the company? And it's obviously this is not a right-wing conservative company, that's trying to form a union and sneak one in on Microsoft, in the buy. It was just kind of interesting that now, because they're mad, before they were saying, oh, this company's so awesome, they're going to be a union, the first union with actual developers in it. And then the second that got turned down, now, oh, they're racist and they are sexist. and they're calling them names. So,
yeah,
I thought that was interesting how quickly the stages turn.
The individual who's claiming this put a thread out on Twitter, Benny Wilson, and he says, one of the biggest problems at Proletariat is people thinking toxic positivity equals good culture. Smiling and looking the other way while employees are openly disrespected is awful. I've seen seniors, that would be senior employees, not senior citizens, yelling at younger employees, women crying in meetings, fat lady jokes. White men have doubted my so immediately this guy jumping into the race immediately. White men have doubted my experiences with racism. They disagree with me when I say the studio isn't inclusive. This all happens in the open. Everybody sees it. Women have told me that they've been spoken over in meetings. Wow, Brian, can you imagine has somebody in a meeting, a superior, speaking over you? That's just so that's so unbelievable. Spoken over in meetings, yelled at and shut down while managers watch. I've reported all of these several times to HR, my manager, over the years. Proletariat hasn't progressed at all since I joined in 2019. So, a couple of things. Immediately, this guy's talking about they disagree with me when I say the studio isn't inclusive. That's an opinion, right? So just because they're white,
he already said.
Brian, no, I'm going to cut you off. I'm cutting you off because I'm a misogynist. Shut up, Brian. Yeah. I'm talking. I'm talking here. Thank you. What was I saying? I don't remember. He jumps into this thing of they disagree with me on that it's inclusive, so that makes them racist.
But he's talking about how there's women in these meetings. Well, they're okay. You're talking about having minorities in your meetings, but then you're saying they're not an inclusive company. If it was all men, then it would not be an inclusive company. If it was all white men, it would not be an inclusive company. But you're talking about, you're not liking that seniors feel like they have the right to make an opinion stronger than a non-senior, is what I'm kind of gathering out of that. Or sometimes you have employees that they'll talk a little louder because they feel like their opinion is accurate and yours is not. This is something that I don't think is necessarily tied to being white or being a male. Women crying in the meetings, do you think that makes them look good? Say women get talked over and so they cry during a meeting. I mean, you're not making your stance really strong here. I don't know. Why didn't you say this publicly years ago? All of a sudden now, why is it being said?
And I'll say this, I the whole idea, I reported this to HR. To me, that's kind of a bullshit thing to say. I mean, you can report anything to HR, right? You can go to HR and say, I can go to the New Infection Podcast HR and say, Brian said something that was mean to me. HR they take those reports in. That doesn't necessarily mean they act on them. They're not required. Now, if you say Brian said he was going to murder me and my entire family, and he said he's going to bring a gun into the office tomorrow and kill all of us, that's maybe a little bit of a different story. But literally, look at these are the emails that he brings forward. Just today's example of ridiculing an employee who stated that they're struggling mentally. See attached. It's just like, so your boss or your manager is yelling at you, and that's grounds to contact HR and claim. I'm sure nobody likes being yelled at. Nobody likes getting talked down to. I get it, Brian, but if you're going to work at a company the size of Blizzard, that's kind of what's going to come. That kind of comes with the territory. I hate that that's the case, but it is.
Okay, and now that you're with a new employer, pretty much right. Your company's been purchased within the last however many months.
2 months,
now have a different set of management. Go and give your complaint to the new management. I have a feeling Microsoft will probably deal with it a very different way than your small little studio that was working on this before.
And he says he's done that. And if these are the emails that were sent out on January the 11th and both of these on January the 11th, by the way, at 8 p.m., if these are his things of I reported it to HR and nothing's done, this is the most disingenuous argument I've ever seen. You can't send an email to HR and then not have something done in 12 days and then go public with it as if they're just allowing all this stuff to skirt by. That is so disingenuous.
Did they show what the image, like what was the image? It was a still image. Like how was that showing?
It looks like a crappy scan of a piece of paper. I can't tell now.
I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Does the attached image look like diversity and inclusion?
I don't know what the image is. He didn't.
I mean, it's a white piece of paper, so it's it's definitely
maybe that
not.
Is that his statement?
He's like, this is a white piece of paper. You only have white paper in the copier. This is not inclusive. That's what I'm getting out of this.
This is very inclusive right here.
Yes.
the old
yellow pads of paper here.
Yeah. So I don't know what the claim is. Sending an email to HR and then blasting them publicly a couple of days later when you didn't get your response immediately. Again, first of all, I don't think that's that's not appropriate to do. Second of all, just let the process work. Let it go. Like this stuff, if this is a real issue, it will be handled in all likelihood. Mm-hmm. But putting them on blast is probably not going to get them on your side, would be my guess.
Well, yeah, and they're putting on here, one more than I'm going to work on my resume.
Okay.
And this is
then go work on your resume.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Go and say, hey, I really, if you're going to go complain about something like this, rather than just coming in with that aggressive posture, especially with a new employer, come to them and say, hey, I've noticed a history of this kind of behavior and things that I think really bring down the culture of what's happening here at work. And I would really love to talk to someone to maybe give them some ideas of what's happening here so that maybe they can curb it and make it something that works better.
Listen to this letter that he sent to his HR and then tweeted to all the local Black Lives Matter chapters. Hi. All right. Hi. So there. Great. Real good. So there's been a lot of toxicity at my company over the years. I'm one of the 2 black employees and feel unsafe speaking up here, as do many others. Well, if there's 2 black employees, I mean, okay, so 50%. My company has a Black Lives Matter statement up. No one asked my thoughts about it, nor does it reflect our company's values. I'm a black gender queer who has been mocked numerous times here and my concerns dismissed. I find the statement offensive and feel it appropriates the work of the black community and allies doing the real work. My request to have it taken down has been ignored twice now. Is there anything that can be done? So he sent this email to a bunch of local Black Lives Matter chapters to try and get this. This is how you're operating at work. This is how you're conducting yourself. Brian, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. A company puts up a Black Lives Matter statement, which, by the way, is stupid in the first place. There's no reason that you have to put up a statement about something like that. The whole premise is ridiculous. Company puts up a statement, and it's not enough. It doesn't reflect me. This statement was just put up before he started working there in 2019. My guess, I don't know.
Yeah.
This is
strange.
It's so strange, and it's God. this is why Phil Spencer said in his thing, good on you for still releasing content and with all the madness that's going on. And so, and it's just this idea of, well, I sent an email to ask for a page to be removed and it didn't happen. So therefore I'm being oppressed or I'm being discriminated against. Who the hell makes you the decider of what the company's official statement is on Black Lives Matter? What about the shareholders? What about the rest of the employees? This is the problem.
And why are you encouraging them to take up a political stance at all? Like the point is, you're supposed to be making video games. I mean, that's what's supposed to be happening to these companies, not be making rallies. He's probably one of the ones, because he's been there. That whole union group has been talking about him, so he's probably one of the guys that really pushed to get that union in there. I mean, he sounds like a horrible employee to have, who's fighting against the company in a lot of different ways. Because, rather than working with the company, he seems to be working against them. If you think there's a problem, work on getting it improved. And sometimes that takes a little bit of tact. Actually talking to people and making it to where you're not just the person going, nah, 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 nah. Actually talk to them. Show them that there's an issue. Make your voice known in a way that's going to be heard. And I just don't, so far, everything I've seen is just him not doing that.
No, he's taking his petty grievances to Twitter to try and get sympathy from the woke mob, so that the woke mob will threaten the company and then the company will be forced to move. Or here's the real thing, Brian. If it's truly that bad of a situation, there's a really great idea. Quit. Find somewhere else to work if you truly believe, if what you're saying is true and accurate, then why are you working there? You've been there since 2019. You've been putting up with this garbage. Why? Why would anybody subject themselves to that?
Well, and they, let's see, they're out of Boston. So this is the Boston.
Yeah. So he's tweeting all the Black Lives Matter chapters in Boston to try and get them to probably, send a mob with pitchforks and Molotov cocktails over to this this game development's office and firebomb it in the name of, equality or whatever they do.
And they've got about 120-ish employees as of 2021. And like the other than they've worked on the most recent World of Warcraft expansion, but before that, when they weren't with Microsoft, they were working on a game called Spellbreak, which I've seen, I've not really played.
Okay.
So other than that, it's been ones that I've not ever heard of from 17, 16, and 15. So, I mean, he's talking about something where they only got purchased in June. June of 2022 is when they announced.
This only happened.
They were ending development of Spellbreak, and then in July, Blizzard announced that they were going to be purchasing them. So you've been working with them for a couple of months
at the best.
Yeah, I mean, come on. And most of that's probably been training and ramp up time of getting into the company. You've probably done minimal amount of work for them up to this point. Yeah. And yet you're complaining about how everything works. I mean, it seems silly, especially with how little time that they've been working there. And have his complaints been before Microsoft took over? Just say, why don't you write an email? Hey, here's a history of complaints I've had here at the company, just so your HR is aware. And here's something that happened recently. I'd love it if you could look into it and start to try to create a culture of change here. Bam, let them do it. See if something happens. But you haven't been there long enough for them to actually create a culture shift in your little small company that you've been a part of.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. And it's just I don't know.
What does his sexuality have anything to do with working at that company? You notice he had to mention it there.
Yeah. Well,
he had to say,
yeah, Brian, this is the whole thing. You've got to, it's the only individuals who are, it's the same individuals that are saying, oh, it's racist. Then they're the first ones to bring up race, or the first ones to bring up sex, or the first one to bring up gender identity. All of this, it's constant.
Yeah. It's odd.
Yeah. It's
all
just
right.
Bizarre.
So let's finish up a few things with Microsoft. Phil Spencer did mention in one of his talks here recently, he was saying 2022 was really light on games. Supposedly 2023 is going to be better. I assume a lot of it has to do with, for instance, with Activision Blizzard them trying to get this purchase through. I don't think they could really make a lot of changes at that company when they don't even have the purchase approved. But they are promising to have a better year in development. Some new things coming out here next year. One thing that I found interesting is they were talking about how this new Last of Us TV series. Have you had a chance to watch that at all?
No, and I've heard from a lot of people I should. I've heard a couple of people say
it's really, very good.
Yeah. So have you watched it?
Yeah, I've watched. They've had 3 episodes so far. I've watched all 3 of those.
Okay.
Done very well. The storytelling's very good. Of course, politically, it's not right down my aisle. I mean, we already know from The Last of Us, it's done by I'm trying to remember his name, Druckmann or whatever it is, that did the video game. But they're doing it close enough. It feels like the same kind of story, done in the same kind of storytelling. This last episode, though, was done in a very different manner, to where it was kind of like a side story. It was something that was very lightly referred to in the game, and the whole episode really wasn't about The Last of Us as far as the main characters, Ellie and I don't remember his name right now. But it wasn't about them. It was about these 2 gay guys and their whole story, and it was starts with the episode and pretty much ended with the episode, a single story. And I think that it's going to be that worked very well for the way that they did that episode. And they did it in a way that told a really good story. It kind of added a little bit to the story of what's happening in the show. But I think if they can kind of fill in, because sometimes you get these shows like The Walking Dead where they're just doing filler episodes. Like nothing really happens. They're walking for 3 days, doing the same thing that they've done for the past 5 years of the show. I think if they can keep up this pace of having a really good story like that, and then kind of keeping that whole story going along, because they're following a little bit of the game, but it's different enough. And so we'll see how it goes. Microsoft said, though, hey, this is proof that the whole acquisition should go forward, because look, they can have their own success. Look how this is a Sony product. A Sony exclusive, and it's one of the #1 watched television shows right now.
That would be very interesting if that came back to bite Sony in the ass. That would be pretty rich. I don't know. I haven't watched it yet. Now, let me ask you this: do I have to have played Last of Us to watch the TV show, or
no?
Okay.
No, my wife hasn't played the video game,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you could. It's going to give you an idea of some of the story. It's going to kind of
I already know a little bit about the story, yeah.
Oh, sorry, it's Joel, yeah. So Joel, and it'll go through and kind of tell you what happens. But they change it up enough to where when you're playing the video game, it's not going to be like, oh, I was already at this part, or I've already seen this part. It's to where they're going through and doing some things kind of close, but it's not close enough to ruin the video game experience.
Yeah. Well, and tell you what, I can't stress you how disappointed I was with the Halo TV show that recently came out. That when I saw people talking about this show, I was like, I haven't even watched the game, but just my last experience with television shows with video games were utter disappointment. But this one seems to not be that case. So no, I guess I'll give them a try.
So, and here's one of the people that work at Microsoft. They said, Sony's talent and IP across gaming, TV, movies, and music are formidable and truly impressive. It's no wonder they also continue to dominate as the market leader for consoles. In gaming, Sony is the first of us, and they will be just fine without the FTC's protections.
Wow. Yeah.
So.
Very, very well done there, describing and explaining that situation. So, no, I have not. Where's it on? Is it on HBO?
Yeah, it's on HBO. It's an HBO series. So Last of Us, HBO. Check it out. I'm sure politics are going to have things that are kind of mixed, but so far it hasn't been too crazy one where it's not seeming super woke. It seems like they did a very good job of it. And I think you definitely should watch it. I think you'd enjoy it.
Okay. I can do that. Where do we go from here, Brian?
All right. Well, Let's talk about, how about we talk about Russia here for a moment? We got a little
What's
bit of
going
time
on
left.
with the old Ruskies.
Well, Russia has been saying that popular video games have been hidden inserts targeting its youth, and so they want to start banning some of these games.
Like
You know,
China.
where they're yes, and China kind of has some of the same type of comments that they've made over the past few years, where blocking some of these things. But they're saying that some of the things, for instance, all the LGBT stuff, a lot of that they're really against. I mean, you only hear so much about it over here, but they really view that a lot of the things that we're seeing pushed over here, and is really, they view it as propaganda. You know, they put a ban on what they call LGBT propaganda in the country, and so they're going to start banning things that they feel are really kind of pushing that whole narrative over there. So, you know, there's a lot of limits in what can be sold there. A lot of studios are not selling video games there. I've heard hints of them making a national game engine, you know, having a Russia EA, you know, different things like that. But you know, this is something where I can't 100% disagree with them on some of these things, because if you look, there is a lot of propaganda in video games, and it's being used to push agendas. You know, not that this is the way to do it, but I think that the problem is when you give them some of a case, then it's hard to say, well, you know, you can only have so much of an opinion on this. They're looking at the things that are coming out of America and saying, well, we don't want that here. Like, let's block it. And that's what they're starting to do. And, you know, if I saw some of these things from the outside and saw what was being pushed, especially look at Disney, for example, and the things that they've been pushing on kids for the last few years, I would say, no, I don't want that here. And they're just taking a very hard stance because, you know, they're not as accepting of people that are gay and things like that. And they definitely go overboard. But, you know, that when we push it so far here, it's easy for them to tell their citizens, hey, look at this. You want this here? And you don't think they're going to get behind that when that's so counter to what is acceptable over there? Same with Middle Eastern countries. You know, you push some of those things there, they look at our culture and be like, wow, that is horrible because of their perspective. You know, their perspective is very different. We are used to a lot of the things that we see here. When I was young, you would look at European television compared to American television, and it was a night and day difference. There, they would have nudity on public television, you know, that kids could see. Here, when in the 90s, I remember when there was the first bare butt on television.
Whoa!
And that was, you know, so you got to think, like, come at it from that perspective of, we would look at any form of nudity on television back in the 90s, and it was like, that was a no-go.
We
like,
still
that
do.
didn't happen.
Large impact. The U.S. is still
a lot. But I'm saying,
on.
like, a bare behind, a partial, you know, nudity on a person. That happens and goes over the air now.
It does,
but they
still,
do broadcast it.
In comparison to Europe, the United States is still
where they
very conservative with their
topless women. They have everything over there.
Yeah, it's just not a thing here. It's very interesting.
But if you think it from that perspective of what at that time, when that was something that shocked people, when they showed the first one, you know, a guy walking out of a shower and there was a bare behind there, that was a shock to people. Well, over in some of these countries, that would still be a shock, you know, and then you start pushing what we show today on cable and things like that and start to push, you know, they're going to be like, whoa, that's crazy. I just think we've been numb to a lot of these things to where we don't even know where the line is anymore.
That's true.
And so I think, here they're pushing some of these things, saying, well, we don't want that here, you know, and but because we've let so much go, how do we argue with them on some of these things? Because they do have legitimate points. We don't want propaganda, even though they want their propaganda.
But that's how you argue. See, that's how you argue with it. They're coming from, this is not a free and open society that's making this claim, right? When China says, "Oh my God, we don't want this we don't want to watch this," well, yeah, that's because they want to push their Chinese Communist Party narrative. When Russia says we don't want our kids seeing this, they want to push the communism is good, fellow comrade. Work for the government and join the military and be a good soldier for us. That's how you argue against it. Is there some valid claims about what is seen on television right now? Sure, but not from my vantage point. Not when you're Russia, who just wants to control the narrative 100% for your society anyway. That's to me where it loses all of its muster.
But that's internally in their country. This is what they're pushing. They're saying, look at what America is offering. Do you want that? And I think because of they're
not giving them the question.
From,
they're saying, this is what America showed. We will not show this because it is bad.
Well, yeah.
So,
but I think for a lot of those people, they're not going to see it from the same perspective of we do. That's kind of the issue is over there, they're going to be behind that as far as, well, that does look crazy. Just like in the Middle East, they're going to look at that and they'll be like, that is crazy. And here right now we're at the stage where we see, trans people dancing in front of little children, and we say, well, that's crazy. But, not everybody thinks that crazy. We look at that and say, that's crazy. Over there, it takes a lot less for them to think it's crazy.
Yes.
Just showing a gay person on television over there is crazy, right?
Yeah.
So, but that's what they're going to start banning video games and media that has these type of things in there.
If it was anybody else, I'd probably have some different thoughts on it, but because it is Russia and the way that they operate and the way that they conduct themselves, I don't put much stock in it, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, and they've been making a lot of these claims. And one thing that's interesting is China. They pushed kind of the same thing where, I was reading an article. They were talking about when they were trying to make some films over there, and the demands that China had was the girls, the bigger boobs, and there were no black people. That was the two demands that China had, and you see that play out because Disney will release a movie over there, and when you see the posters of what is being shown, Star Wars, when they put it out there, what is missing from those posters? The black people,
the predominant black character,
who's one of the main characters in this show, and so I think that's really interesting that Disney's all in over here, but if you're really all about protecting people's rights and making everybody equal, why would you go to that company and for money be willing to remove the black person from your poster? Stand behind it.
There's a great saying, Brian, that I will admit I've used in my day job before. If it weren't for double standards, the left and the Democrats would have no standards at all, and that's exactly what it is. Yeah, Disney is arguable. Well, and you've seen the impact. Disney has been ravaged as a company over the last couple of years because of what you just pointed out. It's the same bullshit with Nike and the rest of these. Oh, we're gonna stand with people, yet they'll stand there holding a whip on a Taiwanese kid to make LeBron James's sneakers so we can talk about how they're fighting for human rights or whatever. It's the biggest load of crap in the world. So a lot of this stuff comes down to people don't know truly what goes on in some of these other societies and these cultures, and it's makes them very blind to everything that's going on. I've got an update here on a story, Brian, that we talked about a couple of weeks ago surrounding Ubisoft and their one of their studios in Paris that was going to go on a strike. That was set to take place on the 27th. That was Friday, and that strike did take place. 40 workers at the Paris studios of Ubisoft, where they're headquartered, I will note, gathered Friday afternoon to strike for the rest of the day. So their strike began shortly after 1 p.m.
Really missed those QA workers.
They worked the whole QA morning. And then around 1 o'clock, they met in the studio's cafeteria. Listen to this. For a group discussion about the state of the company. So a bunch of workers who decided not to work, just wanted to discuss the state of the company, the pressure of, quote, intense development cycles, and how to coordinate actions to resist policies that can overwork developers. So if you're going to resist policies, you're going to get fired. That's pretty clear.
Not over there.
Well, I guess you're right. No, maybe not over there. The main topic was mostly around what's next. The attendees who spoke anonymously for fear of retaliation, which by the way, they were in the cafeteria of the company.
Yeah, how do you speak anonymously? Where they put a bag over their head?
Well, they're speaking anonymously to Axios, but they sat in the company cafeteria, so that to me doesn't make any sense at all. Saying that what they're going to face over the next 18 to 24 months will be hard. In a statement, the workers told Axios that the recent development cycles for Ubisoft's Paris products, including Just Dance and Ghost Recon, had led to developer burnout. Wow. The attendees estimate the
Just
turnout.
Dance, that's a hardcore game there.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the
recording people dancing and color coding it. I mean, it's great.
The attendees estimated the turnout was more than 15% of the development studio where series such as Ghost Recon are developed. So this was not Ubisoft's main headquarters. This was one of their side offices in Paris, and it was less than 40 people. So they struck on a Friday afternoon for a couple of hours, and then they went back to work on Monday and said that the next 18 to 24 months, which is a long time, is going to be hard. So, great job,
well, at least
guys.
they have
You
jobs in a place where there's a lot of unemployment with their younger people.
Well, I'll tell you what, when it all hits the fan, which it is, it will be very interesting to see how quickly some of these protests and actions like this change when you actually have to worry about having a job and putting food on your table. So that's the update on all Ubisoft Paris.
And one more update from a past show.
Sure.
The whole thing with the D&D license kind of blew up. People freaked out. The community just went nuts with the whole thing. And after all the outrage, they have fully retreated from that D&D license that we discussed over the last couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And they have released the Creative Commons license. So the previous license is now Creative Commons.
Wow.
Which means they cannot retract it. It's an open source type of a thing. It can't be changed by them in any way to say, hey, we're revoking this or anything like that. So
this is
something definitely a difference in policy from what they had talked about when it first got leaked.
Well, and I think what this goes to show you, and you know, some folks might call us a hypocrite, Brian, for saying, oh, wow, so you put pressure on Ubisoft and you don't like it, but you put pressure on Wizards of the Coast and it's a good thing. You have to be able to look at these two situations completely differently. Wizards of the Coast put forward a new policy that would have essentially stripped away license and rights from people that make anything in the D&D universe, which was a change for D&D's been out for what 50 plus years. I mean, it was a huge change from how D&D's been perceived and played in the past, and it would have literally destroyed the entire industry. So I think it's a little bit different than when you describe the situation with Ubisoft and some of the others. But obviously, when real people that play the game and have actual impact voice their concerns, things change. When you're just sitting on the outside throwing stones at the Harry Potter game and you're not going to buy it and you never were going to buy it, it's really you don't have as much power behind your voice. If you've been a lifelong D&D creator for 20 plus years and you talk to the Wizards of the Coast and you say, hey, what's going on here? It's got to hold a little bit more weight than some random guy on Twitter. So it goes to show you when bad decisions are made, you can actually have an impact on it.
Yeah, so they're leaving the OGL, which is the Open Game License 1.0A, in place, untouched. They're making the entire SRD, which is the Systems Reference Document, version 5.1, available under a Creative Commons license, and then you get to pick and choose which one you prefer to use.
Sweet.
So, this is something where a lot of people were scared because it was going to seriously impact their ability to make content under the D&D license. And it was overriding all previous D&D content. You could no longer use your previously created content and still release it and make any form of money off of it because you had to use the new license, period. No choice. And you had to pay them a percentage, and they own the rights to the license or to your content. You didn't own your content anymore. In the new license, they owned your content and could choose what they did with it or what you did with it. It was just insane what it did. And so that was a necessary reaction to something that was pretty crazy that they were pushing. And here, I think this was the safest thing they could have done to maintain their community and not, because if they would have kept pushing forward with this, I think the whole DMD would have crushed. I think it would have crumbled. I don't think we would have had D&D, and I think something they would have started to replace it from some other type of organization. But from here, I can see that this is going to be, they did not release a previous one. It just had gotten leaked and they hadn't officially announced it yet. I think they dealt with it in a way that probably will keep people going, because the fact that it's under Creative Commons, they can't touch it. They can't revoke it. And so it makes people feel safe.
Yeah, well, I'd say whoever's bright idea it was to move forward with with this license that was essentially retroactive, obviously doesn't understand anything about the community. And yeah, it would have been interesting to see if anything new would have come forward, or if kind of maybe an older board game would have just popped up and like kind of taken over the whole D&D space. That would have been very interesting.
Yeah, and that's what with it going the way it was, that's what I was expecting, was something else would be replacing it, especially with all the changes they were making. And then how are you going to make money off of something when they own it? You don't even own the rights to what you're creating anymore, and that's going to drive the whole community away. People aren't going to bother making things under that license anymore.
Yeah.
Was there anything else you wanted to cover before we? One thing, Factorio is raising its price. Not having ever put it on sale, but they said to account for inflation, they're going to be raising their price $5 more.
Wait,
so it's now going from 30.
Wait. The game that's already been built, due to inflation, they have to raise the price? What the hell does that mean? It's a digital product.
The game that has never, ever, ever gone on sale as well.
My God.
Well, it's $30, and I said if it ever goes on sale, then I will purchase it. Now, here's what I think they are doing. I think they're raising it to $35, so then they can put it on sale sometimes for $30.
Brian,
which I don't know. That kind of puts me in a tough spot. I still don't feel like that's a win. If I purchase it at $30 still.
I'm going to make a claim right here on our first ever new episode of the brand new Infection podcast. With this being said, I will never purchase Factorio. Never. That's
okay.
Absolute. Here's the thing, and we're running a little long, but I have to say, Brian, with everything going on in the world right now, with the housing boom, or the housing bubble that we're now seeing, with people getting let go from their jobs, I call absolute horseshit that they think that they are justified a 5% increase due to inflation. Ross said server costs, maybe, but probably
it's an offline game. No, it's an offline game.
But the server costs of you're handling the
Steam.
Yeah, but okay, whatever. There's some costs ongoing, but none of that equates to a 5% increase. That's just absolute bullshit.
It's only sold on Steam, so they're not managing any of their own servers for hosting the game. They're not even doing their own financial transactions of doing the credit card purchases. Like, what ongoing costs do you have, or anything that's impacted by inflation, to justify raising the price on a game that you've never lowered the price on? It's been out since 2016, and it's the same price as what you released it at when it went to 1.0. Now, it was cheaper in $25 or whatever prior to releasing it, and then they raised it on the day that they went 1.0 to $30, and it's never fluctuated from that. They just going up to $35.
To me, that kind of shows that a group like this, they truly don't maybe realize what's going on. Maybe they just don't understand. Maybe they just truly don't understand what's going on in the world.
Yeah, they think everything's great.
Well, I mean, seriously, because you can't look at what everything's going on right now and you go, maybe
we should raise the price.
Yeah, maybe we should raise the price. I don't know. And whatever. I wasn't going to buy the game.
They're trying to get more sales. Yeah, they're not trying to get more sales. They're just getting the high cost sales. It's like, it's been out for many years now. I mean, 2016, and you've been selling for $30 every single copy you have.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's good.
All right.
Kind of made me a little bit frustrated. So,
well,
all right. Well, hey, if you want to find me, of course, You can find me at Boise Computer on Twitter. You can find me at Brian Aldridge on Gab, Parler, Getter, Truth Social. One thing you could do is go check out our website. We have updated it, and it's got a new look. We have added some new icons and things like that. But also, if you find anything that doesn't look right, go check it out and see. You can always let us know. If you're going to do that, just join our Discord server. Jump in there and leave us a note. I did put on there the servers for all our different ARC servers, so you can see those now, and they're all listed, and you can see the live player accounts and join them right from that page. If you do join our Discord server, we have a new notice there that tells you how to get to be a part of the ARC community, and there's a news channel. If there's some topic that you think would be relevant for our new format of the show, toss a link in our news channel in the Discord, and we'll get that put into the show notes, and if it's something that's valid, we'll talk about it. Thank you, everybody, for putting up with our new flow and everything that's going on, and thank you, Nick. I think it went pretty well.
Yeah, well, thank you for all the work on the website. I do want to thank a couple of folks that have that hit us up with some support here during the show. USAF Zombie hit us up with the 18-month resubscription here before the program. And how about this? UGX Vibe, 60 whole months. Appreciate it. Thank you very much for that, for your continued support. For example, that goes to things like buying that intro so that we could customize that. That's where some of those funds and monies go. And with the new idea, Brian, and the new tagline on the show that progressive politics have ruined everything, I'm not sure that we'll be invited to any more PAXs. So maybe we got to start the old. Maybe we'll have to start the old infection con. We've been talking about it for quite some time to go that way. Brian, thanks for all your hard work over the last couple of weeks with this, and look forward to continuing it for years in the future.
Very good. Yep. Thank you. We'll see you all next week.
Yes, we will. You can follow me on Twitter at Nicholas M. Craig. You can check out my day job at nickcraig.com, where you can download the Wilmington's Morning News podcast. That's going to do it for the first ever episode of the brand new Infection podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. If you missed any portion of the show, make sure you head on over to our website. It's infectionpodcast.com.